I'm standing at the altar in my grandmother's vintage lace dress, 8 months pregnant, watching my billionaire fiance's face turn ghost white as I connect my phone to the projector screen behind us. His mistress is running for the exit. His mother is screaming at security to cut the power. But when I play the recording of what he really thinks about me and our baby, even his father, the man who signed off on my murder, drops to his knees in front of 300 wedding guests. Hi, I'm Emma Hayes, and this is the story of how I discovered my fairy tale engagement to Portland's most eligible bachelor was actually a death sentence with a wedding cake. If you want to know how a third-grade teacher making $48,000 a year outsmarted a family worth $2.1 billion, exposed three separate murder plots, and walked away with everything they tried to take from me, you need to stay until the very end. Because what the billionaire groom said at that altar, those words will haunt you forever. And I promise you won't see the final twist coming. Hit subscribe right now because you're not going to want to miss a single second of this. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. 3 weeks ago, I found something on my fiance's laptop that changed everything. But to understand why I didn't run, why I chose to walk down that aisle knowing what I knew, you need to understand who I really was before Blake Donovan entered my life. I'm 32 years old. I teach third grade at Riverside Elementary in Southeast Portland, Oregon. 24 beautiful, chaotic third graders who call me Miss Hayes and bring me drawings of rainbows and dinosaurs. My annual salary is $48,000. That barely covers my $1,250 rent for a one-bedroom apartment in a not-so-great neighborhood. The minimum payments on my $38,000 in student loans from Portland State, and groceries if I'm careful. I drive a 2012 Honda Civic with 173,000 miles on it. I finally paid it off last year, and I cried in the bank parking lot when I made that final payment. My one luxury, the thing that makes me feel like maybe I'm not completely failing at life, is a $6 latte from the coffee shop near school, twice a week, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And even that makes me feel guilty every single time. My father died 4 years ago. Robert Hayes, heart attack at 58. He was a construction foreman who worked himself literally to death trying to provide for us. He'd wake up at 4:30 in the morning, come home at 7 at night, covered in dust and exhaustion. I was his favorite. He used to call me his smart girl. He died at 3 months before I got my teaching certificate. He never got to see me become a teacher. My mother, Margaret, remarried 2 years after Dad died. She married Frank Miller, a car salesman who's nice enough but will never ever replace my father. They live in Gresham in a small house with Frank's 2 teenage sons from his first marriage. We have dinner together once a month. It's always awkward. And then there's my sister Claire, 29 years old, absolutely gorgeous, and living with our mother because she can't afford her own place. Claire has 62,000 Instagram followers. She calls herself a lifestyle influencer. What that means is she takes photos of herself in borrowed designer clothes, posts motivational quotes she didn't write, and occasionally gets paid $300 to promote teeth whitening strips or diet tea. She also has $73,000 in credit card debt. I know because she asked to borrow money from me last year. I gave her $500. She never paid me back. Growing up, Claire was always the pretty one. Blonde hair, blue eyes, perfect skin, the kind of girl who got asked to prom by 3 different guys. I was the smart one. Brown hair, average height, average looks, the kind of girl who spent Friday nights studying instead of partying. Dad loved us both, but I was his favorite, and Claire never, ever forgave me for that. After he died, the rift between us grew wider. She blamed me for being the favorite. I resented her for not being there when he was sick, for being too busy taking selfies to visit him in the hospital. We were civil at family dinners, but we weren't close. We weren't really sisters anymore. I never thought someone like Blake Donovan would look twice at someone like me. 3 years ago, my school held its annual fundraiser auction. We were trying to raise money for new playground equipment because ours was literally held together with duct tape and prayers. Every teacher donated something: art lessons, tutoring sessions, baked goods. I donated what I thought was a clever idea: homemade Italian dinner for 2, my grandmother's recipes, her lasagna, her Caesar salad, her tiramisu, the kind of meal that takes all day to make and tastes like love. I expected it to sell for maybe $200, $300 if we were lucky. The auction was in our school gym, decorated with streamers and balloons, filled with parents and local business owners looking to support the school and get a tax write-off. Blake Donovan walked in 45 minutes late. I remember the moment exactly. The auctioneer was in the middle of selling a weekend getaway to Cannon Beach. Everyone was in casual clothes, jeans and sweaters. And Blake walked in wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than my car, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Every head in the room turned. The auctioneer actually stopped mid-sentence. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest tonight, Blake Donovan from Donovan Enterprises." Polite applause, whispers. Everyone in Portland knew the Donovan name. Real estate empire, billionaires. The kind of family that got featured in Forbes and donated wings to hospitals. The auction continued. Blake sat in the back checking his phone. I didn't think much of it. Rich guy making an appearance at a charity event? Standard. Then my item came up. Next item, the auctioneer announced, a homemade Italian dinner prepared by one of our wonderful teachers, Miss Emma Hayes. Do I hear $50? Silence. Awkward, painful silence. Parents had been bidding all night, but they'd already spent their budgets on previous items. The silence stretched. I was standing on the side of the gym, blushing, wanting to disappear into the floor. The auctioneer tried again. "Come on, folks. Miss Hayes makes the best lasagna in Portland. $50 to start?" More silence. I wanted to die. Then from the back of the room, Blake Donovan raised his paddle. $10,000. The room went dead silent. Someone gasped. I thought I'd misheard. The auctioneer looked confused. "I'm sorry, did you say $10,000? Blake repeated clearly. "For Miss Hayes' dinner." The room erupted. Parents were standing up, taking photos, whispering frantically. The principal literally covered her mouth with both hands. And I just stood there, frozen, thinking, this has to be a joke. This has to be a mistake. But it wasn't. Blake Donovan had just bid $10,000 for my $40 lasagna. The auctioneer, still in shock, managed to say, "Going once, going twice, sold to Mr. Donovan for $10,000. The room burst into applause. People were cheering, my coworkers were hugging me, and Blake was walking toward me, smiling like he'd done the most normal thing in the world. "I hope $10,000 is enough for the best Italian dinner in Portland," he said. I couldn't form words. "That's incredibly generous. You didn't have to." "I know. I wanted to." Up close, he was devastatingly handsome, tall, probably 6'2", sharp jaw, blue eyes that looked at me like I was the only person in the room, a smile that made my stomach flip. "I'm Blake," he said, offering his hand. "Emma," my voice came out as a squeak. "I teach 3rd grade, I know. I did my research before coming tonight." "I heard you're the best teacher here." "Who told you that?" "The internet. Your school has a Facebook page. Parents rave about you." He'd researched me before coming. That should have been my first red flag, but instead I felt flattered, seen, special. We exchanged phone numbers. He told me to pick a date for the dinner. "Any night works for me. I'm excited to taste this famous lasagna." Then he left, shaking hands with the principal, taking photos with parents, working the room like the natural politician he was. I drove home that night in a daze. $10,000. A billionaire had just bid $10,000 on my dinner. Jessica, my best friend and fellow 2nd grade teacher, called me the moment I got home. "Emma, oh my God, what just happened?" I don't know. I was laughing and crying at the same time. "He bid $10,000, Jess. $10,000 for your lasagna." She was laughing too. "That man is either insane or into you. It's for charity. He was just being generous." "Emma, no one is that generous. He wants to see you again." "Don't be ridiculous. He's a billionaire. I'm a teacher who lives in a 400 square foot apartment." "So you're amazing. Any man would be lucky to have dinner with you." I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't. Men like Blake Donovan didn't date women like me. This was a one-time thing, a charity gesture, nothing more. I was wrong. 3 days later, Blake texted me, "Have you chosen a date for our dinner? I'm getting impatient to try this legendary lasagna." I stared at my phone for 10 minutes before responding. "How about next Friday? I can cook at my apartment if that's okay." "Perfect. Send me your address. And Emma, I'm looking forward to it." I spent the next week in a panic. I cleaned my tiny apartment for 6 straight hours. I scrubbed every surface. I bought new dish towels. I rearranged my furniture 12 times. Jessica came over to help and to calm me down. Emma, you need to breathe. It's just dinner. It's not just dinner. I was nearly hyperventilating. A billionaire is coming to my apartment. My apartment that's smaller than his walk-in closet. So what? You're cooking him an amazing meal. That's what he paid for. What if he thinks I'm boring? What if we have nothing to talk about? Then he'll eat quickly and leave, and you'll have a great story. Either way, you win. Friday came, I spent the entire day cooking. My grandmother's recipes were time-intensive. The lasagna alone took 4 hours. Fresh pasta, homemade marinara sauce simmering for hours, 3 different cheeses. I made Caesar salad from scratch, including the dressing. I made tiramisu the night before so it had time to set. By 6 o'clock, when Blake was supposed to arrive, my apartment smelled incredible and I was a nervous wreck. I'd changed outfits 5 times, settling on a simple blue dress that Jessica had helped me pick out. It wasn't fancy, but it was pretty. It made me feel pretty. Blake knocked at exactly 6 o'clock. He showed up with a bottle of wine that probably cost $400 and a bouquet of white roses. He was wearing dark jeans and a cashmere sweater, the kind of casual outfit that still probably cost $2,000. Emma, he smiled, you look beautiful. Thank you. Come in. Please excuse this. It's small. He looked around my apartment. The entire thing, kitchen, living room, and bedroom, was probably smaller than his bathroom, but he didn't look judgmental. He looked curious. This is cozy. I like it. We ate dinner at my small kitchen table. I'd been worried about conversation, but it flowed naturally. We talked about education, about his foundation that donated to schools, about my students, about teaching philosophy. Blake was smart, engaged, asking thoughtful questions. He had 3 servings of lasagna. This is incredible, he said. Seriously, I've eaten at Michelin star restaurants, and this is better than anything I've had. You're just being nice. I'm not. I promise you I'm not. After dinner, we moved to my tiny living room. We talked for 5 more hours. About life, about purpose, about what mattered. Blake told me about growing up with wealth, but feeling empty. I told him about losing my father and feeling lost. We shared things I'd never shared with anyone. Deep things. Real things. At 11 o'clock, he stood to leave. I walked him to the door. Emma, he said, I know this started as a charity auction, but I really enjoyed tonight. Would you want to do this again? Dinner, but somewhere other than your apartment. Let me take you out properly. I'd like that. He kissed my cheek. Sweet, gentlemanly, perfect. Good night, Emma. After he left, I stood in my apartment for 20 minutes, just smiling like an idiot. Then I called Jessica. Jess, I think I just had the best date of my life. I told you. Any man would be lucky. That was the beginning, the start of what I thought was a fairy tale. What I didn't know was that Blake Donovan had walked into that school fundraiser with a specific purpose. His mother, Victoria, had sent him there. She'd researched elementary schools in Portland, looking for exactly the right kind of target. Low-income area, beloved teachers, women who would be grateful for attention from a man like Blake. Victoria had given him specific instructions. Find a grateful one, poor, sweet, someone who will worship you, someone no one will miss very much. The $10,000 bid wasn't spontaneous generosity. It was calculated, strategic, the beginning of a murder plan 3 years in the making. But I didn't know that then. Then I just thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. The next 6 months were like a dream. Blake pursued me with the kind of intensity I'd only read about in romance novels. Flowers delivered to my classroom every Monday. My students went absolutely crazy. Miss Hayes has a boyfriend. Is he a prince? When can we meet him? Blake texted me good morning every day and good night every night. He asked about my students by name. How's Marcus doing with his reading? Did Sarah turn in her science project? He actually listened and remembered. Our second date was at a French restaurant downtown, the kind of place with cloth napkins and 5 courses and a wine list I couldn't even pronounce. I felt completely out of place in my Target dress, but Blake made me feel like I belonged. He held my hand across the table and told me I was the most interesting woman he'd ever met. Our third date was a helicopter ride to the Oregon coast. A helicopter. He picked me up at my apartment at 6 in the morning, drove us to a private airfield, and we flew over the mountains as the sun rose. We spent the day at Cannon Beach, walking barefoot in the sand, eating fish and chips, flying kites like children. It was magical. Blake met my students in month 3. He came to my classroom as a guest reader, read them a story about a dragon and a brave knight, answered their questions with patience and humor. Afterward, he donated $50,000 to our school. The principal cried. The parents threw a reception in his honor. Blake Donovan was a hero. My coworkers were thrilled for me. Emma, you deserve this. You work so hard. You're so kind to everyone. Finally, something good is happening to you. Jessica was less enthusiastic. Emma, this is too good to be true. Be careful. What do you mean? I mean, billionaires don't just randomly fall in love with elementary school teachers. It's like a movie. It's not real life. So what are you saying? He's pretending to like me? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying be careful. Keep your eyes open. Don't lose yourself in this. You're just not used to nice guys, I said, defensive. Blake is different. He's genuine. He cares about education, about making a difference. I hope you're right, Jessica said. I really do. 4 months into our relationship, Blake told me he loved me. We were at Cannon Beach again, watching the sunset. The waves were crashing against Haystack Rock. The sky was orange and pink and purple. It looked like a painting. Blake took both my hands. Emma, I love you. You're the most real person I've ever met. You make me want to be better. I was crying happy tears. I love you too. He kissed me, and I thought, this is it. This is the moment I'll tell my grandchildren about. The moment my life changed forever. I wish I could go back and warn that version of myself. I wish I could tell her that Blake Donovan was following a script written by his mother, that every romantic gesture was calculated, that the flowers, the helicopter rides, the donations to my school, all of it was designed to make me fall completely, desperately, blindly in love. Because women in love don't ask questions. Women in love ignore red flags. Women in love are easy to manipulate, easy to control, and when the time comes, easy to kill. But I didn't know that then. Then I was just a 32-year-old teacher who thought she'd finally found her happy ending. Month 6 brought a new development. Blake wanted me to meet his parents. Sunday dinner at the Donovan estate. I was terrified. Don't worry, Blake said. They'll love you. What if they don't? What if they think I'm not good enough for you? Emma, you were just an incredible teacher who changes kids' lives every day. You're compassionate, brilliant, beautiful. Anyone would be lucky to have you in their family. Your mother is Victoria Donovan. She's on the Forbes Most Powerful Women list. I'm a teacher who lives in a 400 square foot apartment. So what? I don't care about any of that. I care about you. The Donovan estate was in Portland Heights, the wealthiest neighborhood in the city. I'd driven past gated communities like this before, but never imagined I'd actually be inside one. Blake's childhood home was 12,000 square feet of intimidation. White columns, marble steps, a circular driveway with a fountain. It looked like the White House. I wore my nicest dress, navy blue from Target, $45. I'd spent an hour on my hair and makeup. I felt sick with nervousness the entire drive there. Blake held my hand and told me everything would be fine. It wasn't fine. Victoria Donovan answered the door herself, not a butler or housekeeper, but Victoria personally. That should have been my first clue that this was some kind of test. She was 63 years old but looked 50. Perfectly styled blonde hair, expensive suit, diamonds that probably cost more than my student loans. She looked me up and down like I was a specimen under glass. So you're the teacher, she said. Not nice to meet you. Not welcome to our home. Just so you're the teacher. Yes, ma'am, I'm Emma. Emma Hayes. I teach 3rd grade at... She turned away before I could finish, dismissing me. Blake, darling, come say hello to your father. Blake kissed on his mother's cheek and guided me inside. The foyer alone was bigger than my entire apartment. Marble floors, crystal chandelier, a sweeping staircase that looked like something from Gone with the Wind. Blake's father, Richard Donovan, was in the living room with a glass of scotch, even though it was only 4 in the afternoon. He was 66, silver-haired, handsome in a faded way. He stood when we entered and shook my hand limply. Emma, Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too, Mr. Donovan. Please call me Richard. That was the extent of his contribution to the evening. Richard Donovan sat in his leather chair, drank his scotch, and said maybe 10 words the entire night. I found out later he was a functional alcoholic. He'd been drinking since noon, every day, for 30 years. Dinner was served in a formal dining room by staff in uniform. The table sat 12, but there were only 4 of us, so we were spread far apart. Victoria at one end, Richard at the other, Blake and I in the middle, across from each other. It felt designed to make conversation difficult. The meal was 5 courses. Each course had specific silverware. I had no idea which fork to use. I watched Victoria and tried to copy her. I'm pretty sure I got it wrong because she kept giving me looks. Victoria interrogated me throughout the meal. She phrased them as questions, but they felt like attacks. Where did you go to college, Emma? Portland State University. I got my teaching degree there. A state school. She said it like I'd admitted to a crime. I see. What do your parents do? My father passed away 4 years ago. He was a construction foreman. My mother is remarried to a car salesman. Blue collar. How quaint. She smiled without warmth. Do you have any assets? Any inheritance from your father? No, ma'am. My father worked hard his whole life, but we didn't have much. Of course not. She took a sip of wine. And you have student loans, I presume? Yes, about $38,000 remaining. Victoria looked at Blake. 38,000, such a burden. I'm working on paying them down, I said, feeling defensive. I make payments every month on a teacher's salary. How long will that take? 20 years? Probably. But I love teaching. It's not about the money. How noble. The way she said noble made it sound like an insult. Throughout dinner, I kept trying to make eye contact with Blake, silently begging for help. But he just smiled and told his mother about a new real estate deal, changing the subject like everything was fine. When I excused myself to use the restroom, I got lost. The house was massive, hallways branched off in every direction. I finally found a bathroom, but on my way back, I heard voices coming from a study. The door was cracked open. I recognized Blake's voice and his mother's. I should have kept walking. I should have gone back to dinner. But something made me stop. Some instinct. Some warning bell in my subconscious that said, listen. She's perfect, Victoria said. Docile, poor, grateful. She'll do exactly what we need. Mother, I actually like her. Liking her is irrelevant. She fits the profile. Don't complicate this with sentiment. But what if... Blake, Victoria's voice turned sharp. We've discussed this. The timeline is set. Don't question it now. I know. You're right. Good. Now go back out there and be charming. Make her feel special. Make her fall completely in love with you. Silence. Then Blake said, what if she finds out? She won't. She's too trusting. Too naive. Women like her believe what they want to believe. You tell her you love her, she believes you. Simple. I stood in that hallway frozen, my heart pounding. Profile? Timeline? Make her fall in love? What were they talking about? I convinced myself I'd misunderstood. Taken things out of context. They were probably talking about business, about some deal. Not about me. It couldn't be about me. When I returned to dinner, Victoria smiled at me. Everything all right, dear? Yes, ma'am. Just got a bit turned around. It's a large house, easy to get lost. The rest of dinner was torture. I couldn't eat. My stomach was in knots. Blake drove me home afterward, holding my hand, asking if I'd had a good time. Your mother doesn't like me. She's just protective. Give her time. She'll warm up to you. Blake, I heard something. When I was looking for the bathroom, I heard you and your mother talking. Something about a profile? A timeline? Blake's jaw tightened for just a second. Then he laughed. Oh, that. We were talking about a development project. Mother has very specific profiles for potential properties. It's incredibly boring business stuff. Oh, I felt relieved and stupid. Sorry, I shouldn't have been listening. It's fine. He kissed my hand. I know meeting my parents is stressful, but I promise they're going to love you. Over the next year and a half, I had dinner at the Donovan estate once a month. Every single time was worse than the last. Victoria found new ways to criticize me. My hair was too plain, my clothes were cheap, my posture was poor, my grammar was unrefined. She made me use the side entrance. The front door is for family. She seated me at the far end of the table. That's where the staff usually sit when they join us for holidays. When I tried to help clear plates, she snapped, "We don't let guests do housework, Emma. Sit down." Blake's response was always the same. "Just ignore her. She's like this with everyone." My father didn't stand up for me. Richard Donovan sat at the head of the table drinking scotch, saying nothing, doing nothing. I started having panic attacks before each visit. Jessica suggested I tell Blake I couldn't go anymore. If he loves you, he'll understand. He'll stand up to his mother for you. But I couldn't ask that. I was terrified Blake would choose his mother over me. So I endured it. I smiled through Victoria's criticisms. I used the side entrance. I sat in the staff chair. I made myself smaller and smaller, trying to be acceptable, trying to be enough. Then came Christmas Eve, 2 years into our relationship. The Donovan estate was decorated like something from a magazine. Hundreds of white lights, enormous tree, tables of catered food, 200 guests, politicians, business owners, Portland's elite. I wore a green velvet dress Blake had bought me. He'd started buying me clothes because, as he gently put it, you'll feel more comfortable at these events if you're dressed appropriately. Translation: my clothes weren't good enough. Halfway through the party, Blake tapped his champagne glass. Everyone quieted down. Victoria was smiling in the front row. She knew what was coming. Blake got down on one knee in front of me, in front of 200 people, in front of cameras and phones recording every second. "Emma Hayes, you've brought joy and love into my life. You're kind, compassionate, beautiful. You make me want to be better. Will you marry me?" He opened a ring box. The diamond was massive, easily 5 carats. It caught the light and sparkled like a trapped star. I couldn't breathe. 200 people were staring at me, waiting. Phones were recording. Blake was smiling up at me, looking perfect and hopeful. I couldn't say no, not in front of all these people, not with cameras recording, not with Victoria watching like a hawk. Yes. The word came out barely audible. Yes. The room erupted in applause. Blake stood and kissed me, slipping the ring onto my finger. It was heavy, too heavy. People rushed forward to congratulate us. Victoria hugged me for the first time ever. She leaned in close and whispered in my ear, "Don't disappoint us, dear. You have no idea what disappointment costs in this family." Her breath was cold. Her words were colder. I felt ice spread through my veins. But Blake was laughing, accepting congratulations, showing everyone the ring. Everyone was so happy. Why was I the only one who felt like I just made a terrible mistake? The engagement period lasted 7 months. 7 months of losing myself piece by piece. Victoria took over the wedding planning immediately. I wasn't asked. I was told. "Emma, dear, I've hired a wedding planner. Patricia is the best in Portland. She'll handle everything. But I'd like to be involved. Of course, you'll approve all her decisions. But honestly, planning events of this caliber is quite complex. You don't have experience with this." Translation: you're too poor and unsophisticated to plan your own wedding. The wedding planner, Patricia, was a severe woman in her 50s who clearly worked for Victoria, not for me. Every meeting, Patricia would present options and then say, "Mrs. Donovan has selected this one." The venue? Donovan Estate. I wanted a small ceremony at the Botanical Gardens. But Victoria said, "We have 300 guests. The Botanical Gardens can't accommodate that." 300 guests? Blake and I had talked about a small wedding. Maybe 80 people. "Emma, your side can invite 50 people maximum. We can't have the church look unbalanced." 50 people. I'd already made a list of 80 teachers, friends, family. I had to cut it down. I had to choose who mattered enough. The dress? Victoria chose it. $15,000, Vera Wang. Beautiful, but not me. I'd wanted something simpler, something that felt like me. But when I tried to say so, Patricia said, "Mrs. Donovan has already purchased it." The flowers? White roses. I wanted wildflowers, something colorful and natural, but Victoria said white roses are classic, elegant, appropriate. The food? Selected by Victoria. The cake? Selected by Victoria. The music? Selected by Victoria. "Blake," I said one night, "this doesn't feel like our wedding. It feels like your mother's event." She's just trying to help. She's good at this kind of thing. But what about what I want? What do you want? I don't know, something smaller, more personal, more us. Emma, we have 300 guests. We can't exactly have a backyard barbecue. I'm not suggesting that. I just want some input. You have input. You approved everything. No, I didn't. Your mother decided everything, and I went along with it because you told me to just trust her. Blake sighed. Are we really going to fight about wedding flowers? It's not about the flowers. It's about feeling like I don't have a voice. You have a voice. I hear you. But my mother is paying for this wedding. It costs over $200,000. I think we can let her have some say. Some say? She has all the say. Emma, stop being ungrateful. That word hit me like a slap. Ungrateful. Because I was poor, I should be grateful for whatever they gave me. I should accept everything without complaint. I should be thankful they were even allowing me into their family. I'm not ungrateful, I said quietly. I just want to feel like this is my wedding too. It is your wedding. Blake kissed my forehead. I'm sorry, you're stressed. This whole process is stressful. But after the wedding, everything will be perfect, I promise. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Then came the prenuptial agreement. Blake's lawyers presented it to me 6 months before the wedding. 47 pages of legal language I barely understood. What is this? Standard prenup. We need to protect family assets. I started reading. The terms were brutal. In the event of divorce, I would receive $0. Nothing, not a penny. All children would be considered legal property of the Donovan family. If we divorced, Blake would have full custody. I would have no parental rights. If I embarrassed the family, the agreement defined this incredibly broadly. I would forfeit all rights and be liable for financial damages. If I committed adultery, I would lose everything, including any parental rights, and would owe the Donovan family $5 million. If Blake died, I would inherit nothing. All assets would go to the Donovan estate. Blake, this is really extreme. It's standard for families like ours. Families like yours, not families like mine. Emma, it's just a formality. We're not getting divorced. This is just to protect everyone. But if something happened, if we did get divorced, I'd have nothing. No money, no kids, nothing. Blake took my hands. Are you planning to divorce me? Of course not. Then why does it matter what the prenup says? I called Jessica that night. Jess, I need your honest opinion. I read her the terms of the prenuptial agreement. Emma, Jessica's voice was serious. Do not sign that. Diso. That is the most insane prenup I've ever heard of. Blake says it's standard. It's not standard. It's designed to trap you. Emma, please, please don't sign that. If I don't sign it, he'll think I don't trust him. He'll think I'm only marrying him for money. Maybe he should think that. Maybe it would show him you have some self-respect. Jessica, I love him. Does he love you? Because nothing about this situation says love to me. You don't understand. I'm 32 years old. My dad is dead. My mom remarried. I have student loans and a shitty apartment. Blake is my chance at a real life, at a family, at stability. A real life? Emma, this isn't a life. This is a cage. You're wrong. I hope I am. I really, really hope I am. I signed the prenup. I told myself it didn't matter. We were in love. We'd never get divorced. Everything would be fine. It wasn't fine. My relationship with Blake changed after the engagement. He became more distant, more critical, more controlling. He'd comment on my weight. Maybe you should skip dessert tonight. You want to fit into your wedding dress. He'd criticize my teaching. Is being a teacher really what you want to do forever? Don't you want something more ambitious? He'd question my friendships. Why do you spend so much time with Jessica? She seems like a bad influence. I'd try to push back, try to defend myself, but Blake always had an answer, always a reason why he was right and I was being too sensitive. My students started noticing. Miss Hayes, are you okay? You seem sad. I'm fine, sweetie. Just busy with wedding planning. But I wasn't fine. I was disappearing. The confident teacher who'd walked into that fundraiser 3 years ago was gone. In her place was an anxious, insecure woman who second-guessed everything she said and did. Then came the pregnancy. 8 weeks before the wedding, I was late. I took a test during my lunch break at school. Locked in the staff bathroom while 24 third graders ate their sandwiches in the cafeteria. 2 pink lines. Positive. Oh my God, oh my God. I put my hand on my stomach. I was pregnant. Blake's baby. Our baby. I was terrified. The wedding was in 2 months. I'd be showing by then. Victoria would be furious. She wanted me thin for the photos. She'd made that abundantly clear. But also, maybe this was good? Blake wanted kids. He'd said so. Maybe this would make him happy. Maybe this would bring us closer together. That night, I cooked Blake's favorite meal at his penthouse. Steak, roasted vegetables, chocolate lava cake for dessert. I'd practiced what to say 100 times. I had the pregnancy test in a small gift box with tiny baby shoes I'd bought at Target. Blake arrived late, distracted on his phone. Can this wait? I have calls to make. No, it's important. Please. Just 5 minutes. He sat down at the table, still checking his phone. Okay, what's the surprise? I handed him the box. Open it. He opened it, pulled out the baby shoes, saw the pregnancy test. His face went completely white. He froze for at least 10 seconds, just staring at it. Blake, say something. I'm pregnant. I couldn't tell if I was asking or telling. His smile was forced. This is wow. Okay, I wasn't expecting this. Are you happy? Of course, yes. I'm just surprised. We weren't trying, I know. But accidents happen and, right, accidents. The way he said that word, accidents. Like I'd broken something, like I'd made a mistake. We'll figure it out, I said quickly. The wedding is in 2 months, but I won't be showing much yet. And then we'll have a baby by next summer. It'll be perfect, perfect. Right. Blake stood up. I need to make a call. Now? Blake, we just found out we're having a baby. Can't your call wait? It's work. Important. Just give me 20 minutes. He went into his office and closed the door. I stood in the kitchen, hand on my belly, feeling utterly alone. This wasn't how I'd imagined this moment. I'd thought he'd be excited. I'd thought he'd hold me and tell me everything would be okay. I'd thought wrong. At 2 in the morning, I woke up to use the bathroom. Pregnancy symptom, frequent urination. Blake wasn't in bed. I could hear his voice coming from his office. The door was cracked open. We have a problem, he was saying. She's pregnant. A woman's voice responded. How far along? 8 weeks, she said. That's actually perfect. This moves up the timeline. Are you sure we should? Don't question me. I'll handle it. Just keep her calm and compliant. I stood in the hallway, my hand on my belly, my entire body shaking. Timeline. The same word I'd heard 2 years ago when Victoria was talking about me. This moves up the timeline. That's actually perfect. What timeline? What were they planning? I went back to bed. Didn't sleep. Just lay there in the dark, hand on my belly, fear spreading through me like ice water. The next 2 weeks were a nightmare. Blake became a different person. Or maybe he just stopped pretending. He stopped coming home, said he was working late. When he was home, he was cold, irritable, mean. He'd snap at me over nothing. You forgot to buy milk. You left dishes in the sink. You're so needy. I was exhausted from teaching while dealing with morning sickness. I'd throw up before school, during lunch, after school. I'd come home to an empty apartment. Blake would forget to buy groceries even when I asked. I'd cry while eating crackers for dinner because I was too tired and nauseous to cook. One night I asked him the question I was terrified to hear answered. Blake, do you even want this baby? He didn't look up from his laptop. Of course I do. Then why do you act like you hate me? I don't hate you. I'm stressed about work. Stop being so needy. I'm not being needy. I'm pregnant and alone and scared. You're not alone. You're being dramatic. I felt like I'd been punched. Dramatic, needy, ungrateful. These were the words Blake used now. The kind romantic man from the beginning was gone. This stranger who insulted me had taken his place. A few days later, I suggested postponing the wedding. I'll be showing by then. Maybe we should wait until after the baby. No. Blake's voice was sharp. The wedding is in 2 months. That's perfect timing. Perfect timing for what? He realized his mistake immediately. For everything. The venue is booked. Invitations are sent. We're not postponing. But Blake, Emma, stop. We're getting married in 2 months. End of discussion. The way he said perfect timing, it echoed Victoria's voice. This moves up the timeline. That's actually perfect. Something was very, very wrong. Then there was my sister Claire. She'd never been interested in my life before the engagement. Growing up, she barely acknowledged me. After Dad died, we saw each other maybe 4 times a year at family dinners. But after Blake proposed, Claire suddenly wanted to be involved. She showed up constantly to help with wedding planning. She'd wear low-cut tops and tight dresses. She'd touch Blake's arm constantly, laugh too loudly at his jokes. "Claire, can you tone it down around Blake?" I asked one day. "Tone what down? I'm just being friendly. It feels like you're flirting with my fiancé." "Oh my God, Emma, not everything is about you. You're so paranoid." But I wasn't paranoid, I was right. 2 months before the wedding, I walked into the kitchen at the Donovan estate. Blake and Claire were there, alone. They jumped apart when I entered. Claire's lipstick was smudged. "What's going on?" "Nothing," Blake said too quickly. Claire was helping me pick out wine for the reception. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But something felt wrong. Claire started posting photos on Instagram with Blake. Photos without me. Captions like "wedding planning with the groom and my future brother-in-law is the best." Her followers commented, "Wait, are you marrying him? Why isn't your sister in these pictures?" When I confronted her, she said, "You're just jealous of my follower count. Grow up, Emma." I didn't know then that Victoria had already bought Claire's loyalty. $500,000 and a job at Donovan Enterprises in exchange for her cooperation. My sister had agreed to help them kill me for money. But I didn't know that yet. I just knew something was deeply, terribly wrong, and I had no idea how to fix it. 3 weeks before the wedding, Blake left his laptop open at his penthouse. It was a Sunday afternoon. He was supposedly at the office, but actually, I'd learn later, with his mistress at the hotel. I was supposed to be resting. High-risk pregnancy, doctor's orders. But I was anxious, couldn't sleep. I wandered into Blake's office, the room I was never allowed in. His laptop was sitting on his desk, open, unlocked. First and last time that ever happened. I sat down, told myself I'd just check the wedding vendor payments. Make sure everything was organized. That's all. Then an email notification popped up. Subject, tonight with a heart emoji. Sender, VH, preview, can't wait to see you. Room 412, 8 p.m. Where would I like? My heart stopped. VH? Room 412? This was sent to Blake today. While I was home, pregnant with our baby. I shouldn't open it. I should close the laptop. Forget I saw it. Trust my fiancé. But I couldn't. I clicked. The email chain loaded. I read message after message, feeling my world shatter with every word. Blake to VH. 2 more weeks and I'm legally bound to her. This is torture. VH to Blake. I know, baby. Just remember, we get the payout once you're married 6 months. Then we're free. Blake. I keep thinking about that teacher's face when she realizes, God, she's so trusting. VH. Oh, that's why your mother picked her. Easy target. Blake. The pregnancy complicates things. VH. Your mother says it's actually perfect. More sympathy when the accident happens. I read it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, hoping I was misunderstanding, hoping this was some kind of joke. But there was no misunderstanding, words like easy target and when the accident happens. They were planning something bad, something that involved me being trusting and then having an accident and them getting a payout. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the laptop. I wanted to scream. I wanted to vomit. I ran to the bathroom and did exactly that. Morning sickness and shock, combining into a violent physical reaction. When I came back, I knew I needed more information. I needed to understand what I just read. I opened Blake's files, hands trembling, heart pounding. There was a folder on his desktop labeled EH Project, my initials, Emma Hayes Project. I clicked. Inside were documents that would change my life forever. A life insurance policy. $5 million on Blake's life. Beneficiary, Vanessa Hartley. Date issued 4 months ago, 1 month after our engagement. Another life insurance policy. $3 million on Blake's life. Beneficiary, Victoria Donovan. Bank statements showing cash withdrawals, $5,000 to $10,000 every Thursday night for 6 months, marked as consulting fees. But I knew Blake. He didn't pay consultants in cash. Hotel receipts. The Sentinel Hotel, Presidential Suite, Room 412. 24 visits over 6 months, every single Thursday night, $76,000 total. And then the document that confirmed my worst nightmare, a file titled timeline.docs. I double-clicked, opened it, started reading. With every sentence, my horror grew. The document was labeled Project EH Timeline. It had phases. Phase 1, the engagement. Target, Emma Hayes, 32, elementary school teacher. Profile, low income, no family wealth, trusting, isolated, desperate for love. Method, public proposal creates witnesses that relationship was romantic. Prenup ensures she has no legal claim to assets. Status, complete. Target signage, prenup without legal counsel. Phase 2, the pregnancy. Objective, establish paternity for maximum sympathy post-incident. Timeline, Target became pregnant 8 weeks ago. Public perception, Blake was going to be a father, critical for post-incident PR. Status, complete. Target is 8 weeks pregnant. Phase 3, the wedding. Date in 2 months. Location, Donovan Estate. Guess, 300, 250 from Donovan's side. Witnesses to happy marriage. Objective, legal marriage certificate plus public record of loving relationship. Status, in progress. Phase 4, the waiting period, 6 months post-wedding. Objective, establish appearance of stable marriage through charity events, social media posts, pregnancy updates. Vanessa Hartley maintains low profile during this period. Status, not yet initiated. Phase 5, the incident. Method, staged accident, drowning preferred, Victoria's specialty. Location, coastal property or yacht owned by Shell Company, untraceable. Cover story, tragic accident during baby moon weekend. Target will be 9 months pregnant or postpartum for maximum sympathy. Blake plays grieving widower. Media strategy, pre-written press releases, interview talking points. Projected outcome, national sympathy, business boost, political connections strengthened. Phase 6, the aftermath. Blake waits 18 months before moving on with Vanessa Hartley. Appropriate mourning period. Vanessa introduced as someone who helped him through grief. Marriage 2 years post-incident. Insurance payout, $5 million to Vanessa, laundered through offshore accounts. $3 million to Victoria. Investment in next development project. Blake's public image, tragic hero who found love again. The document went on. Potential complications. Target becomes suspicious. Low risk, proven extremely naive. Target's family interferes. Low risk. Mother remarried and distant. Sister is compromised. Sister is compromised. Claire. My sister. They'd bought my sister. Assets in place. Claire Hayes, Target's sister. Payment, $500,000, promised position at Donovan Enterprises. Role, help gaslight Target or provide alibis, eventually comfort family after incident, play devastated sister for media. Also listed, Dr. Morrison, medical examiner, $200,000, will rule death as accidental. Detective Walsh, Portland PD, on Victoria's payroll for 10 years. Judge Hendricks handles any legal challenges. Conclusion, project remains on schedule. Target shows no signs of suspicion. Proceed as planned. I sat at Blake's desk, reading this document, my hand on my pregnant belly, and I couldn't breathe. I literally could not breathe. They were going to murder me. They were going to wait until I gave birth, then kill me in a staged drowning accident. Blake would play the grieving widower. Vanessa, whoever she was, would comfort him through his grief. They'd eventually get married, and Claire would cry at my funeral and collect her $500,000. And my baby. My baby. The document said Target will be 9 months pregnant or postpartum. They were planning to kill me right before or right after I gave birth. What would happen to my baby? Would they kill her too, or would they let her live so Blake could play devoted single father? I started to hyperventilate. I put my head between my knees, forced myself to breathe. Okay, okay, think. You need evidence. You can't just run. If you run, they'll find you. They have connections, police, judges. They'll find you. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. I photographed everything, every page of the timeline document, the insurance policies, the bank statements, the hotel receipts, the email chain with Vanessa, everything. I heard the penthouse door open. Blake was home. Early. Shit. I was still in his office. I closed the laptop, tried to look casual. But my face was probably white. My hands were shaking. I was sweating. Blake appeared in the doorway. Emma, what are you doing in here? His voice was cold, suspicious. I was looking for the final guest list, for the seating chart. The guest list isn't in my office. I know. I just thought maybe you'd printed it. He stepped closer. I don't like you going through my things. I'm sorry. I was just trying to help with the wedding. Don't come in here again. Understood? It wasn't a request. It was a threat. Understood? That night, I lay in bed next to the man who was planning to murder me. He fell asleep within minutes. He had no idea I knew. I lay there staring at the ceiling, hand on my belly, thinking one thought over and over. I have to get out. But how? If I run, they'll find me. If I go to the police, will they believe me? The Donovans have connections everywhere. Detective Walsh is on their payroll, and I'm pregnant, 8 weeks pregnant, with a baby that might be Blake's, or might not be. Because 8 weeks ago, I'd done something I'd been trying desperately to forget, something I'd been feeling guilty about every single day since. I'd slept with someone else. 8 weeks ago, I was at the Pacific Northwest Teachers Conference in Seattle. It's an annual event, 3 days of workshops and panels about education. Blake and I had planned to turn it into a romantic anniversary weekend, 3 years together. We'd celebrate in Seattle, see the Space Needle, have dinner at nice restaurants. But 2 days before we were supposed to leave, Blake canceled. Work emergency, major development deal falling through. I have to stay in Portland. I'm so sorry, Emma. I was devastated. I've been looking forward to this trip for months. A chance to get away from Victoria, from wedding planning, from all the stress. A chance to remember why I'd fallen in love with Blake in the first place. Go without me, Blake said. Attend the conference. It's important for your career. Alone, you'll be fine. Just a couple days. We'll celebrate when you get back. So I went alone, but I checked into the hotel, a nice place downtown Seattle. I attended workshops during the day, and in the evenings, I sat alone in the hotel restaurant, eating dinner by myself, feeling pathetic. On the second night, a man sat down at the bar next to me. Excuse me, is this seat taken? No, go ahead. He ordered a drink. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Then he said, let me guess. Teacher? I laughed to spite myself. How did you know? You have that look. Patient, kind. Like you actually care about people. That's a pretty specific assessment from 30 seconds of observation. I'm good at reading people. He extended his hand. I'm David. David Winters. Emma Hayes. We started talking about education, about the conference, about life. David was the keynote speaker at the conference, though I hadn't attended his session. He ran a nonprofit called Bright Futures Education Fund. They donated money to schools in low-income areas. His organization had given millions of dollars over the past decade. That's amazing, I said. I teach at a low-income school. We could use all the help we can get. Where do you teach? Riverside Elementary, Southeast Portland. I know that school. We gave you $50,000 last year for a new playground. That was you? I was genuinely shocked. That playground changed everything for our kids. That's what we do. We want every kid to have a chance, regardless of their zip code. We talked for hours. David was smart, passionate, genuine. He asked about my students, my teaching philosophy, what I loved about education. He didn't ask about my relationship status. He didn't flirt. He just listened. I found out later he was a tech entrepreneur. He'd made a fortune in his 20s, sold his startup for a massive payout, and instead of retiring, he'd started his education nonprofit. He was 35 years old, never married, no kids. He dedicated his life to helping children. At midnight, David said, I should let you get some rest. Early session tomorrow. Yeah, but this was nice. Thank you for the conversation. Anytime. He stood to leave, then paused. Emma, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy? The question caught me off guard. What? Are you happy? With your life? I opened my mouth to say yes. Of course I'm happy. I'm engaged to a wonderful man. We're getting married in a few months. Everything is perfect. But the word yes wouldn't come out. Because I wasn't happy. I was anxious all the time, criticized constantly, made to feel small and worthless. I don't know, I admitted. I don't think I am. You deserve to be happy, Emma. Whatever that looks like for you. He left then, just walked away. I sat at the bar for another hour thinking about his words. You deserve to be happy. When was the last time someone had told me that? The next night, final night of the conference, I saw David again at the hotel bar. He smiled when he saw me. Back for round two, apparently. We talked again. This time I opened up more. About Blake, though I didn't use his name. About feeling trapped. About Victoria's control. About the prenup that gave me no rights. About feeling like I was disappearing. That doesn't sound like a healthy relationship, David said gently. It's not. But I'm 32. I've never had a serious relationship before this. What if this is my only chance? At happiness? Emma, that's not how it works. You don't have to settle for someone who makes you feel bad about yourself. What if I'm the problem? What if I'm too sensitive, too needy, too much? You're not. Trust me. You're intelligent, compassionate, dedicated. Any man would be lucky to have you. I started crying. I don't even know why. Maybe because someone had said something kind to me. Maybe because I'd been holding everything in for so long. Maybe because I was exhausted from pretending to be happy. David handed me a napkin. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you cry. You didn't. I'm just having a hard time right now. I had 3 glasses of wine that night, more than I'd had in years. I wasn't drunk, but I was tipsy, relaxed, open in a way I hadn't been in months. At midnight, David walked me back to my room, making sure I was safe. At my door, I turned to thank him. David, I just want to say thank you for listening, for being kind, for reminding me that I deserve to be happy. You do deserve it. I mean that. I kissed him. I don't know why. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was the first time in years someone had made me feel valued. But I kissed him, and he kissed me back. Emma, he pulled away gently. Are you sure about this? No, I'm not sure about anything anymore. But I want this. Right now, I want this. We went into my room. We slept together. It was tender, caring, completely different from Blake. Blake was always rushed, mechanical, like I was an obligation. David was patient, attentive, present. He made me feel beautiful, wanted, seen. Afterward, I cried again. David held me and didn't ask why. He just held me until I fell asleep. In the morning, I woke up horrified. Oh my God, what did I do? I just cheated on my fiancée. What kind of person am I? David was still asleep next to me. He looked peaceful, kind. Everything Blake wasn't. I couldn't face him. I couldn't have the morning after conversation. So I did something cowardly. I wrote a note. David, I'm so sorry. I'm engaged. This was a mistake. Please don't contact me. Emma, I left the note on the pillow, grabbed my things, checked out of the hotel, drove back to Portland, blocked David's number from my phone before he could call. For the next 8 weeks, I tried to forget that night ever happened. I felt guilty every time I looked at Blake, every time he kissed me, every time we discussed wedding plans. I'd cheated on my fiancée. I was a terrible person. When I found out I was pregnant, that guilt multiplied 1,000 times because I didn't know who the father was. Blake or David? The timeline was close. I'd slept with David 8 weeks ago. I'd slept with Blake 7 weeks ago. The baby could be either one's. I told Blake the baby was his. Because what else could I say? I cheated on you and I don't know who the father is. That would end everything. The wedding would be canceled. Blake would leave me. I'd be alone, pregnant, with no money and no support. So I lied. I told Blake the baby was his. And I tried to convince myself it was true. But now, sitting at Blake's desk, looking at documents that proved he was planning to murder me, I realized something. Blake had known. He'd gotten a paternity test done without my consent. He knew this baby wasn't his. He'd known for at least a month, and he was still going through with the wedding, still going through with the plan, because in his mind, it didn't matter whose baby it was. I was still the target. I was still going to have my accident. And the baby, whoever's baby it was, would be collateral damage, unless I stopped them. The next morning, I called in sick to school for the first time in 8 years. My principal was concerned. "Emma, you sound terrible. Are you okay? Just pregnancy stuff, morning sickness. I'll be back tomorrow. Take care of yourself." I hung up and Googled private investigator, Portland, Oregon. I needed help, professional help. Someone who could investigate the Donovans, gather evidence, help me figure out what to do. I found Martinez Investigations. 5-star reviews. Specializes in infidelity, fraud, and family law cases. I called immediately. The office was small above a pharmacy in Southeast Portland. When I walked in, I was already crying. I couldn't hold it together anymore. The receptionist took one look at me and said, "Honey, sit down. I'll get Dolores." Dolores Martinez was a big woman, probably 52, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Former LAPD detective who'd moved to Portland 10 years ago and started her own private investigation firm. She sat across from me and said, "Tell me everything." I showed her the photos on my phone, the timeline document, the insurance policies, the emails, the hotel receipts, the whole horrifying plan laid out in detail. Dolores read everything in silence. When she finished, she looked up at me and said just 2 words. "Jesus Christ. Can you help me? Honey, I'm going to do everything I can, but I need you to understand something. The people you're dealing with are dangerous. They have money, they have connections. This isn't going to be easy, I know. But I don't have a choice. If I do nothing, they're going to kill me. Then we fight back. Here's what I need to do. I need to identify this Vanessa Hartley person. I need to follow your fiancé and document the affair. I need to follow your sister and find out exactly what her role is. I need to dig into Victoria Donovan's past and see if she's done this before. And I need to build a legal case that will hold up in court. How much will that cost? My rate is $200 an hour plus expenses. A case like this could run $10,000 to $15,000. I only have $8,000 in savings. Dolores looked at me, really looked at me, pregnant, terrified, alone. She made a decision. I'll do it for $5,000. And Emma, we're going to nail these bastards. Dolores Martinez spent the next 7 days investigating my life, and what she found was even worse than I'd imagined. Day 1 was Thursday night. Dolores followed Blake from his office at Donovan Enterprises. He left at 7 p.m., drove directly to the Sentinel Hotel in downtown Portland. Luxury hotel, $800 a night for standard rooms. The presidential suite was $3,000 a night. Blake walked through the lobby like he owned the place. Dolores followed, dressed like a hotel guest, carrying shopping bags to blend in. Blake went directly to the elevators, pressed 4. Dolores followed to the 4th floor. Found room 412, presidential suite. She could hear voices inside, male and female, laughing. She'd brought equipment, a parabolic microphone, the kind police use for surveillance. Technically legal if used in a public space, which a hotel hallway technically is. She pointed it at the door and started recording. What she captured made me want to vomit when she played it for me later. Blake's voice, God, I needed this. 2 more weeks of pretending to care about her. Woman's voice, sultry and confident. Poor Blake, having to sleep next to the frumpy teacher. Blake laughing, she's not that bad. She's just plain, boring. Woman, and soon to be dead. Blake, don't. I feel guilty enough as it is. Woman, you feel guilty? Blake, she's a nobody. She was going to live a teen, mediocre life anyway. At least this way, her death will mean something. It'll boost your career. Blake, I know, mother keeps saying that. Woman, your mother is brilliant. This plan is perfect. Blake, I just hope she doesn't figure it out before the wedding. Woman, she won't. She's too trusting, too naive. That's why Victoria picked her. Dolores also got photographs. She used a long-range camera through the partially open curtains. She got clear shots of Blake and Vanessa kissing. Blake and Vanessa in bed, partially clothed but clearly intimate. Vanessa wearing red lingerie, the exact color Blake had mentioned in his email. Wear what I like. At 11:30 p.m., Blake left the hotel, drove back to his penthouse where I was supposedly sleeping. I was awake. I heard him come in, brush his teeth, slide into bed next to me. He kissed my forehead and whispered, "I love you." I wanted to scream. I wanted to push him away, but I didn't. I just lay there, pretending to sleep, wondering how much longer I could keep up this charade. Day 2, Dolores ran a background check on Vanessa Hartley. Vanessa Hartley, age 28, born in Portland, graduated from University of Oregon with a business degree. Currently employed as Executive Vice President of Operations at Donovan Enterprises. Salary, $250,000 a year. She'd been hired 3 years ago, the exact same month Blake started dating me. That wasn't a coincidence. Dolores interviewed a former Donovan Enterprises employee off the record. The woman who asked not to be named said everyone knew Vanessa was sleeping with Blake. It was an open secret, and everyone knew Victoria approved. Victoria handpicked her. Vanessa lived in a luxury condo in the Pearl District, $4,500 a month. On her salary, that was doable but tight. But she also drove a Tesla Model S, $80,000 car, registered to a shell company owned by guess who? Victoria Donovan. Dolores got access to Vanessa's Instagram using a fake account. Vanessa's profile was private, but she accepted follower requests readily. She was vain, loved the attention. Her Instagram was exactly what you'd expect. Photos of luxury vacations. Cabo, Paris, Aspen, designer clothes, expensive jewelry, fancy dinners. Captions like, "Living my best life and blessed and grateful." No photos of Blake. They were keeping the affair secret. But one photo from 6 months ago showed Vanessa's hand with a distinctive ring next to a man's hand. The man's face was cut off, but his watch was visible. A Patek Philippe, $50,000 watch, Dolores cross-referenced. Blake owned that exact watch. I'd seen it on his wrist 1,000 times. Day 3, Dolores followed my sister Claire. Claire left our mother's house at 10 a.m. on Saturday, drove to the Donovan estate. She was there for 3 hours. Dolores couldn't get close. The property is gated with security, but she photographed Claire entering and leaving. In the afternoon, Claire met Victoria for lunch at Le Pigeon, an expensive French restaurant downtown. $200 per person. Who was paying? Not Claire, who was $73,000 in debt. Dolores got a table nearby. She was wearing a disguise, wig and glasses, dressed like a wealthy older woman. When Claire went to the bathroom, Dolores quickly planted a tiny recording device on the back of Claire's chair. Risky, probably illegal, but necessary. The conversation she recorded made me sob when I heard it. Victoria's voice, "Are you ready for your role at the wedding, dear?" Claire's voice, "I've been practicing my crying face in the mirror." Victoria laughing, "Excellent. When Emma dies, you'll be the devastated sister. The media will eat it up." Claire, "Well, what if people think it's suspicious that I'm suddenly close with you?" Victoria, "They won't. We've been laying the groundwork, the Instagram posts, the wedding planning photos. Everyone thinks you're just a supportive sister." Claire, "And after it happens, do I get what you promised?" Victoria, "Of course. $500,000 wired to your account within 48 hours of her death, plus a position at Donovan Enterprises, $120,000 salary." Claire, "What about Blake? You said there was a chance." Victoria, cutting her off, "Blake is for Vanessa. I thought we were clear about that." Claire, disappointed, "Right. I just thought, since I'm helping." Victoria, "You're being compensated generously. Don't be greedy, Claire. Greed is how people make mistakes." Claire, "I'm not greedy. I've always hated her, you know? Emma, the perfect daughter. Dad's favorite." Victoria, "I know, dear, and soon she'll be gone, and you'll finally have everything you deserve." When Dolores played me that recording, I was sitting in her office. I listened to my sister talk about practicing her crying face for my funeral. I listened to her admit she'd always hated me. I listened to her ask about $500,000 for helping them murder me. I put my head down on Dolores's desk and sobbed. My sister, my own sister, for money. Dolores let me cry for a few minutes, then handed me tissues. "Emma, I know this hurts, but we need to keep going. We need more evidence. Days 4 and 5, Dolores dug into Victoria Donovan's past. She called in favors from her old contacts at LAPD and Portland PD. She asked them to search for any suspicious deaths connected to the Donovan family over the past 40 years. They found 3 cases. Case 1, Catherine Donovan, Blake's biological mother, died 35 years ago when Blake was 3 years old. Official cause of death, accidental fall down the marble staircase at the Donovan estate. But there were inconsistencies in the autopsy report. Bruising on her back that didn't match a simple fall, and a housekeeper who'd initially claimed she saw Victoria at the top of the stairs just before Catherine fell. The housekeeper later recanted her statement and disappeared. Dolores tracked her down. She was living in Arizona under a different name. Off the record, she admitted Victoria had paid her $100,000 to recant and leave Oregon. Case 2, Rebecca Lawson, Blake's first fiancée, died 6 years ago at age 29. Car accident on Highway 101 along the Oregon coast. Drove off a cliff on a rainy night. Officially ruled accidental. But Rebecca had texted her best friend the morning she died. Blake's family scares me. If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. The investigating detective, Detective Michael Walsh, the same detective who was listed in Blake's timeline document as being on Victoria's payroll. The case was closed within 2 weeks. Life insurance payout, $2 million to Blake Donovan. Case 3, James Porter, a business rival, died 9 years ago at age 52. Official cause, suicide by gunshot. But James had been suing Donovan Enterprises for $50 million, alleging fraud in a commercial real estate deal. He was winning the case. Discovery had revealed damaging documents. Trial was set to begin in 1 week. Then James supposedly shot himself in his home office. His wife found him. His family insisted he wasn't suicidal. He'd just become a grandfather. He was planning a retirement trip to Italy. He was excited about life. But the case was ruled suicide, the lawsuit died with him, and Donovan Enterprises avoided a $50 million payout and massive public scandal. Victoria Donovan is a serial killer, Dolores told me on day 7 when she presented all her findings. She's been murdering people for at least 35 years. She killed Blake's biological mother to marry his father and take control of the family fortune. She killed Blake's first fiancée, probably because Rebecca was getting suspicious. She killed a business rival to avoid a lawsuit. And now she's planning to kill you. Why? I asked. Why me? What did I do? You didn't do anything. You're just convenient. Victoria needs Blake to have a wife and child for political purposes. Good family man, devoted father. That plays well for business connections and potential political runs. But she doesn't actually want you in the family long term. You're not from their world. You'd be an embarrassment at certain events. So the plan is, Blake marries you, you have a baby to establish him as a devoted father, then you die in a tragic accident. Blake plays grieving widower. Huge sympathy. Media coverage. Victoria gets $3 million in insurance money to invest in new developments. Vanessa gets $5 million and eventually marries Blake after an appropriate mourning period. Everyone wins, except you. And my baby? I don't know. That part wasn't clear in the documents. But Emma, you said in the initial consultation that there's a chance this baby isn't Blake's, that you slept with someone else 8 weeks ago. Yes, I told her about David, about Seattle, about the one night that I'd been feeling guilty about for weeks. Does this David know you're pregnant? No. I blocked his number. I left him a note saying it was a mistake. Emma, you need to tell him. Why? Even if he is the father, he's just a stranger. A one-night stand. Why would he want to be involved in this mess? Because Dolores said gently, we might need his help. The Donovans have billions of dollars and connections everywhere. We need someone on your side who has resources. He runs a nonprofit. He's probably not rich. Dolores smiled. Emma, I already looked him up when you mentioned him yesterday. David Winters is the founder of Bright Futures Education Fund. He sold a tech startup 9 years ago for $200 million. His current net worth is estimated at $180 million. He absolutely has resources. And more importantly, if there's a chance that baby is his, he has a right to know. I can't ask him for help. I slept with him once. He probably doesn't even remember me. Want to bet? What do you mean? Dolores pulled out her phone and showed me something. David Winters' call log, Or rather, calls he'd made to a private investigation firm. My firm. He contacted me 6 weeks ago asking me to make sure a woman named Emma Hayes in Portland was okay. He'd been trying to reach you, but you blocked his number. He was worried about you. He hired me to check on you from a distance. That's how I knew about him before you told me. That's why I asked you about Seattle. I've been keeping tabs on you for David for 6 weeks. I stared at the phone. David had been trying to protect me for 6 weeks? A man I'd spent one night with cared enough to hire a private investigator to make sure I was safe? He cares about you, Emma. And if that baby is his, he deserves to know. More than that, he might be the only person with enough money and resources to help you fight the Donovans. I don't even know if the baby is his. It could be Blake's. There's a test for that. Non-invasive prenatal paternity test. Just a blood draw from you. Results in 48 hours. Do you want to know? I thought about it for a long time. Did I want to know? If the baby was Blake's, that didn't change anything. Blake was still planning to kill me. But if the baby was David's, that changed everything. That meant this baby had a father who wasn't a murderer. That meant this baby had a chance at a normal life. Yes. I want to know. Dolores set up the paternity test for the next day. She also made a phone call. Mr. Winters, this is Dolores Martinez. We need to talk about Emma Hayes. She's in danger. And she's pregnant. Can you come to Portland? I could hear David's response even from across the room. Is she okay? I've been trying to reach her for weeks. She blocked my number. She's not okay. She's in serious danger. And she needs help. I'm on my way. 2 hours later, David Winters was in Dolores's office. He looked exactly the same. Kind eyes, gentle smile. When he saw me, pregnant and terrified, he didn't hesitate. He crossed the room and pulled me into a hug. Emma, are you okay? I broke down completely, sobbed into his shoulder. No, I'm not okay. Tell me everything. So I did. I told him about Blake, about Victoria, about the timeline document, about the murder plan. I told him about Claire's betrayal. I told him about the police refusing to help because the evidence was inadmissible. I told him about feeling trapped and terrified and completely alone. David listened to everything. When I finished, he said, okay, here's what we're going to do. First, I'm getting you out of that apartment tonight. Second, I'm hiring the best lawyers in the country. Third, we're going to that wedding and we're going to destroy them in front of everyone. David, they'll kill me before the wedding. Not if you're under 24/7 protection. Not if they don't know where you are. This is insane. So is planning to murder your pregnant fiancé. We're fighting fire with fire. There's something else you need to know, I said. The baby I'm carrying, there's a chance it's yours. David was quiet for a moment. Then he said, is there really a chance or are you sure it's mine? I took the paternity test this morning. Results come in 48 hours. I won't know until then. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay, that night in Seattle, did you feel something? Or was it just a one-time thing for you? I felt something, and I told him the truth. I felt more with you in one night than I'd felt with Blake in 3 years. But I was engaged. I was terrified. I ran away because I didn't know how to handle what I was feeling. David reached across the table and took my hand. Then I'm going to help you, whether that baby is mine or not. But Emma, if there's even a chance that child is mine, I'm all in. Not just for the baby, for you. Why? You barely know me, because that one night showed me who you really are. You're real. You're honest. You're kind. And you deserve so much better than what Blake Donovan was giving you. So yes, I'm helping you, whatever you need. 2 days later, the paternity results came back. Dolores opened the envelope because I was too scared. She read it, looked up at me, and smiled. It's his. David is the father. I put my hand on my belly and cried. Relief, fear, joy, everything all at once. This baby wasn't Blake's. This baby was David's. This baby had a father who was good and kind and wouldn't try to kill us. David, when he found out, didn't celebrate or make a big deal out of it. He just said, okay, now I'm fighting for my family. David Winters had resources I couldn't have imagined. Within 24 hours of finding out he was the father, he'd assembled a team. Security team, 6 former Secret Service agents. They would provide 24/7 protection for me, and once we went public, for David and the baby. Legal team, 5 lawyers. Criminal defense, family law, white-collar crime specialists. They would build a case against the Donovans that would hold up in court and coordinate with law enforcement. Tech team, 4 specialists in surveillance, digital forensics, and cybersecurity. They would gather electronic evidence and secure all our communications. Safe House, a property David owned 30 minutes outside Portland. Gated, secure, off the grid. I would stay there until the wedding. The plan was 3 parts. Part 1, get me to safety. That night, while Blake was supposedly working late, but actually with Vanessa at the Sentinel Hotel, David's security team moved me out of Blake's penthouse. They packed everything I owned: clothes, toiletries, photos of my father, my grandmother's recipe book, everything that mattered. They left a note for Blake on the kitchen counter. The note said, "Doctor ordered bed rest. High-risk pregnancy. I'm at a specialized prenatal clinic for monitoring. I'll call you in a few days." Blake called me 15 minutes after he got home and found the note. "Emma, where are you? Which clinic?" I was coached by David on what to say. "The doctor wants me monitored constantly. I'm at a facility that specializes in high-risk pregnancies. I'll be here for a few weeks. I want to visit you." "No visitors allowed. Infection risk. I'll see you at the wedding." Blake pushed back. "Emma, I'm your fiancé. I should be there." "Blake, please, I need to focus on keeping the baby safe. The doctor says stress is bad. Just let me rest here for a few weeks, and I'll be back before the wedding." He stopped arguing after that, probably because Victoria told him to let me rest, keep me calm and compliant. Don't spook her before the wedding. The safe house was beautiful. 3 bedrooms, huge windows overlooking forest, complete privacy. David had hired a nurse to stay with me full-time, monitoring my blood pressure and the baby's heartbeat. I had my own room, comfortable bed, everything I needed. For the first time in months, I felt safe. Part 2, gather legal evidence. David's tech team was brilliant. They hacked into Donovan Enterprises' server using a legitimate security audit loophole. Blake's company used a third-party IT firm for their cybersecurity. David's team infiltrated that firm, claiming they were conducting a routine audit. Once inside the system, they had access to everything. They found the original timeline document on Victoria's personal computer. Metadata showed she'd created it, proving authorship. They found email chains between Victoria, Blake, and Vanessa discussing the murder plan in explicit detail. They found financial records showing payments to Claire, to Detective Walsh, to Dr. Morrison, the medical examiner, all routed through shell companies but traceable with the right forensic tools. But the smoking gun, the piece of evidence that would make this case bulletproof, was an email Victoria had sent to Dr. Morrison 2 weeks earlier. The email said, "When the Hayes woman dies, I need the autopsy to reflect accidental drowning. Pregnancy complications, preeclampsia, she fell overboard during a baby moon excursion. You'll be compensated as usual. $200,000, offshore account, routing information attached." Dr. Morrison's response, "Understood. Same account as the Lawson case?" Victoria's response, "Yes. And doctor, this needs to be perfect. No questions, no investigation, no loose ends." Dr. Morrison, "There won't be. You have my word." David's lawyer nearly jumped out of her chair when she saw that email. This is it. This is conspiracy to commit murder, bribery, corruption of a public official, obstruction of justice, and it ties her to Rebecca Lawson's death. "Emma, with this email, we can bring the FBI in." And we did. David's legal team presented everything to the Portland FBI field office. The agents were skeptical at first. "We get a lot of crazy conspiracy theories, ma'am." But when they saw the evidence, the timeline document, the emails, the financial records, the recording of Claire and Victoria at lunch, their expressions changed. "This is credible," the lead agent said. "This is a genuine conspiracy to commit murder. But here's the problem. We can't arrest anyone yet." "Why not?" I asked. "Because conspiracy requires an overt act in furtherance of the crime. They've planned, they've prepared, but they haven't actually tried to kill you yet. If we arrest them now, a good defense attorney would argue it's just talk, dark fantasy, not a real plan. So what do? You need to get them to confess publicly. On record, in front of witnesses. If we have a clear confession, we can make arrests immediately. That's when we finalize part 3 of the plan, the wedding day exposure. I would go through with the wedding. I'd show up at the Donovan estate in my dress, walk down the aisle, stand next to Blake at the altar. But before any vows were spoken, I'd connect my phone to the venue's projector screen and show every single guest the truth, the timeline document, the emails, the insurance policies, the hotel receipts, the photos of Blake and Vanessa, the audio recording of Claire and Victoria planning my funeral. Everything. In front of 300 guests, I'd expose the entire conspiracy. Blake would panic, Victoria would panic, and hopefully in that panic, one of them would confess on camera. David's team would make sure everything was recorded, hidden cameras throughout the venue, live streaming to secure servers. FBI agents in the crowd, undercover as guests, ready to make arrests the moment they had probable cause. It was risky, dangerous. There was a real chance Blake or Victoria would try something violent. But David had a plan for that too. 5 security guards would attend the wedding, dressed as guests, positioned strategically around the venue. All armed, all trained, all watching me. If anyone made a move toward me, they'd intercept. There was one last detail, the paternity test results. David and I decided I would reveal those at the wedding too. Not just that Blake had been planning to kill me, but that the baby wasn't even his. That he'd known the baby wasn't his and was still going through with the wedding. It would show his plan wasn't about love or family. It was about public image and insurance money. The FBI said that revelation might push Blake over the edge, might make him angry enough to confess something incriminating. 3 weeks passed at the safe house. 3 weeks of tidy, of being cared for, of feeling human again. David visited every day. We talked for hours about everything, our childhoods, our dreams, what we wanted for the baby. He never pressured me, never made assumptions about our relationship. He was just there, constant and kind. And slowly, I fell in love with him, really in love. Not the desperate, grateful, fearful love I'd felt for Blake, but real, genuine, healthy love. One night, a week before the wedding, David and I were sitting on the porch of the safe house, watching the sunset. I took his hand. David, I need to tell you something. Okay, I love you. I know that's probably crazy. I know we barely know each other. I know I'm pregnant and terrified, and you're probably just helping me out of obligation. But I need you to know, I love you. David smiled. Emma, I don't think it's crazy at all. I fell in love with you that night in Seattle. When you talked about your students, about teaching, about wanting to make a difference. I fell in love with your kindness, your intelligence, your heart. I tried to reach you for weeks after you left. I was devastated when you blocked my number. So no, it's not crazy. Because I love you too. He kissed me, gentle and perfect. This is what love is supposed to feel like, I thought. Not controlling, not diminishing, just safe and real and good. What happens after the wedding? I asked. After we expose them and they're arrested, what happens to us? Whatever you want. If you want to get married, we'll get married. If you want to take things slow, we'll take things slow. If you want to move to Seattle, we'll move to Seattle. If you want to stay in Portland, we'll stay in Portland. Whatever makes you happy. I want to be with you. I want to raise this baby with you. I want to build a life together. Then that's what we'll do. The morning of the wedding arrived. I woke up at 6 a.m., nervous but determined. A hair and makeup team came to the safe house. They did my hair in soft curls, my makeup natural but beautiful. I put on my grandmother's vintage lace wedding dress, altered to fit my 12-week pregnant belly. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like a bride, but I felt like a warrior going into battle. David arrived at 7. He was wearing a dark suit, ready to blend in as a wedding guest. He held my hands. You can still back out. We can leave right now, disappear, start over somewhere else. No, if I run, they'll hunt me forever. This ends today. Then let's end them. His security team drove me to the Donovan estate in an unmarked vehicle. I was hidden in the back, arriving early before most guests. I went to a private room, not the bridal suite where Victoria would be, but a small office on the other side of the house. David met me there with Dolores and the legal team. The FBI agents were already in position, dressed as guests, scattered throughout the crowd. The security team was positioned around the venue. Hidden cameras were live streaming everything. My phone was charged and ready, the projector connection tested. Every piece of evidence was loaded and ready to display. At 2 p.m., guests started arriving. I watched from the window, 300 people. Expensive cars, designer clothes, Portland's elite. My side of the family arrived too. My mother, Margaret, looking nervous and out of place. Jessica, my best friend, who knew something was wrong but didn't know what. My mother had no idea what was about to happen. Jessica had no idea. I'd kept them in the dark to protect them. At 2:30, the ceremony was set to begin. The bridal party started lining up. Claire, wearing her expensive bridesmaid dress, checking her phone, practicing her smile for photos. Vanessa Hartley was in the crowd, sitting in the back, wearing a cream-colored dress that was way too close to white, inappropriate for a wedding guest. But she didn't care. In her mind, this would eventually be her wedding too. Blake stood at the altar in his custom tuxedo, looking like a movie star. Victoria sat in the front row, beaming with satisfaction. Richard sat next to her, already drinking even though it was only 2:30 in the afternoon. The music started. The bridal party walked down the aisle. Claire smiled and waved, playing her role perfectly. Then came my cue, the bridal chorus. Everyone stood. I appeared at the end of the aisle and the crowd gasped. I looked beautiful. I looked happy. I looked like a perfect bride. I walked down that aisle alone slowly, taking in every detail. The white roses, the string quartet, the projector screen behind the altar. Every step felt surreal. When I reached the altar, Blake took my hands and whispered, "You look beautiful." I looked him in the eyes and said nothing. The officiant began. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Blake Donovan and Emma Hayes in holy matrimony. Marriage is a sacred bond built on trust, love, and commitment. Blake shared his vows first, reading from a card Victoria had written. Emma, 3 years ago, you walked into my life and changed everything. You showed me what it means to love someone truly, deeply, unconditionally. You are my light, my heart, my future. You are carrying our child, the greatest gift I could ever receive. Today, I promise to cherish you, protect you, honor you, all the days of my life. I promise to be the husband you deserve and the father our child deserves. I love you, Emma. Today, tomorrow, always. The crowd said, "Aw." People were crying. My mother was sobbing. Victoria was smiling. Then the officiant turned to me. "Emma, please share your vows." I reached into my dress, pulled out my phone. Blake looked confused. "Emma, what are you doing?" Before I make any promises, I said, loudly and clearly, "There's something everyone here needs to see." The crowd started murmuring. Blake panicked. "Emma, stop. This isn't the time." "Blake," I said firmly. "Sit down." "What?" "Sit down, now." Something in my voice made him obey. He sat on the altar steps, stunned. I connected my phone to the projector. The screen behind us lit up, and that's when I destroyed everything. The first image appeared on the screen behind the altar. Text messages between Blake and someone named VH. The crowd gasped as they read the words. Blake to Vanessa. 2 more weeks and I'm legally bound to her. This is torture. Vanessa to Blake. I know, baby. Just remember, we get the $5 million payout once you're married 6 months. Then we're free. Blake. I keep thinking about that teacher's face when she realizes. God, she's so trusting. Vanessa. That's why your mother picked her. Easy target. People in the crowd started standing up, shouting. What is this? Is this real? Blake jumped to his feet. Emma, stop. Those are private conversations. You can't. Victoria stood too, screaming. Turn that off. Security. Turn off the power. I looked at Victoria. Sit down, Victoria. Or do you want me to show everyone what you wrote next? I clicked to the next slide. Hotel receipts filled the screen. 24 itemized receipts from the Sentinel Hotel, Presidential Suite, room 412, every Thursday night for 6 months. Total cost, $76,000. Every Thursday night for 6 months, I said, my voice carrying across the stunned silence. My fiancé told me he was working late. He was actually here, at this hotel, in this room, with another woman. I clicked again. Photos appeared. Blake and Vanessa kissing. Blake and Vanessa in bed together. Blake and Vanessa laughing, intimate, clearly lovers. A woman in the back stood up and started toward the exit. It was Vanessa, trying to leave. David's security moved into position, blocking the exits. Sorry, ma'am. The bride isn't finished. Vanessa Hartley, I announced, pointing at her. Executive Vice President at Donovan Enterprises. My fiance's mistress. Also the beneficiary of a $5 million life insurance policy on Blake's life, taken out 4 months ago. The crowd erupted. People were shouting, taking photos and videos on their phones, trying to figure out what was happening. I clicked to the next image, the timeline document. All of it, every phase, every detail. The crowd went silent as they read. They were planning to murder me, I said. Phase 5, the incident. Method, staged accident. Drowning preferred, Victoria's specialty. They were going to wait 7 months after our wedding, then kill me in a drowning accident while I was 9 months pregnant or right after I gave birth. I clicked to the next slide. A photo of a beautiful young woman, Rebecca Lawson, Blake's first fiancée. She died 6 years ago in a car accident. Official story. Rainy night, she drove off a cliff. But look at this. I showed the text message Rebecca had sent the morning she died. Blake's family scares me. If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. Life insurance payout from Rebecca's death, $2 million to Blake Donovan. I clicked again. Another photo. Catherine Donovan, Blake's mother. She died when Blake was 3 years old. Official story, she fell down the stairs. I looked directly at Victoria. But you killed her, didn't you, Victoria? You killed Catherine to marry Blake's father and take control of the family fortune. Victoria's face was white, pure rage. You have no proof. None of this is proof. Actually, I do. I clicked to the next slide. An email from Victoria to Dr. Morrison, the medical examiner. The email read, when the Hayes woman dies, I need the autopsy to reflect accidental drowning. Pregnancy complications, preeclampsia. She fell overboard during a baby moon excursion. You'll be compensated as usual. $200,000, offshore account. Dr. Morrison's response, understood. Same account as the Lawson case? The crowd exploded. People were shouting, crying, trying to process what they were seeing. Then I turned to my sister. And now Claire, my beloved sister, who was going to give a tearful eulogy at my funeral. I played the audio recording. Claire and Victoria at lunch, discussing the plan. Claire's voice admitting she'd been practicing her crying face in the mirror. Victoria promising $500,000 within 48 hours of my death. My mother turned to Claire and slapped her across the face. How could you? How could you do this to your sister? Claire was crying. I didn't have a choice. I'm in debt. I needed the money. You had a choice, I said coldly. You chose $500,000 over your sister's life. Then Blake stood up. He'd been sitting on the altar steps, watching his world collapse. Now he stood, and his mask was completely gone. You think you're so smart, don't you, Emma? He laughed bitterly. You think you won? He walked toward me. Let me tell you who you really are, Emma Hayes, he was shouting now. You were nothing when I met you. A pathetic teacher making $48,000 a year, living in a shithole apartment, driving a piece of crap car. I gave you a life, Blake continued. I took you to nice restaurants. I bought you jewelry. I let you live in my penthouse. I made you somebody. He pointed at my pregnant belly. And that baby? You think I ever wanted that? Then he said the words that would go viral. You were always just the incubator, Emma, a vessel, a placeholder. My mother needed me to have an heir for good optics, but I never planned to raise it with you. The crowd gasped. Several people covered their mouths in shock. The plan was simple, Blake said. Marry you, get you pregnant, wait 6 months after the birth, then you'd have a tragic accident. Postpartum depression. So sad. I'd be the grieving widower with a newborn baby. Perfect PR. He sneered at me. But you're carrying some random's bastard child. So honestly, you did me a favor. He looked directly at me. That baby you're carrying is as worthless as you are. But don't worry, in 6 months you'll both be dead anyway. The crowd erupted in chaos. 3 FBI agents stood up from the crowd. Blake Donovan, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, wire fraud, and racketeering. Blake looked panicked. You can't arrest me. I didn't do anything. It was just talk. Sir, you just confessed to planning a murder in front of 300 witnesses and multiple recording devices. Blake was handcuffed, screaming. Mother, do something! Victoria tried to run. 2 FBI agents tackled her. Victoria Donovan, you're under arrest for murder, conspiracy to commit murder, bribery, and corruption. Claire was arrested next. Claire Hayes, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. She was sobbing. I'm sorry, Emma, I'm sorry. I looked at her coldly. You were going to let me die, Claire, for $500,000. I hope it was worth it. Then, chaos. Vanessa Hartley suddenly pulled a gun from her purse. Small, silver, but deadly. She pointed it at me and screamed, If I can't have him, nobody can. You ruined everything. David threw himself in front of me just as the gun went off. The sound was deafening. David fell to the ground. Blood spread across his shoulder. I dropped to my knees next to him, screaming. David, no! Vanessa was immediately tackled by security guards and FBI agents. David was conscious but bleeding badly. I'm okay. Are you okay? Is the baby okay? Both David and I were loaded into an ambulance. The last thing I saw before the doors closed was Blake and Victoria being pushed into separate police cars, both of them screaming, both of them handcuffed. She was finished. The ambulance ride was a blur. David was conscious but in pain. I was having contractions every 10 minutes, crying, terrified I was losing the baby. You're going to be okay, David kept saying. Both of you. At the hospital, we were separated. David was rushed to surgery. The bullet had gone through his shoulder, missing vital organs. I was taken to the maternity ward. Ms. Hayes, you're experiencing stress-induced contractions. We need to stop them immediately. You're only 12 weeks pregnant. Please, I begged. Please save my baby. They gave me medication. Slowly, over 2 hours, the contractions stopped. The baby's heartbeat remained strong. You're going to be okay, the doctor said, but you need complete bed rest for at least a week. My mother arrived frantic. Emma, are you okay? Is the baby okay? We're okay, Mom. We're both okay. She hugged me, crying. I had no idea what they were planning. And Claire, my own daughter. How could she do this to you? Jessica arrived next. Emma, I saw everything. It's all over the news. I'm okay. The baby's okay. David was shot, but he's in surgery. David? Who's David? The father of my baby. The man who saved my life. 6 hours after surgery, David woke up. I was wheeled into his room. The moment I saw him, I started crying. You're alive. Of course I'm alive. Takes more than a bullet to stop me. I love you so much. I love you too. And as soon as we're out of here, we're getting married for real. No drama, no murders, just us. The next few days were a media circus. The video of Blake's confession went viral. Millions of views. That baby you're carrying is as worthless as you are became the most infamous quote of the year. News outlets called constantly. I turned them all down. This wasn't entertainment. This was my life. But I did agree to one interview with a domestic violence prevention organization. I wanted other women to know, if something feels wrong, trust your gut. Get help. There's always a way out. 8 days after the wedding, I was released from the hospital. David was released 2 days later. We went back to the safe house together. Over the next few months, the legal system worked through the Donovan case. The evidence was overwhelming. Blake Donovan was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, insurance fraud, and racketeering. 30 years to life in federal prison. Victoria Donovan was convicted of first-degree murder in Catherine Donovan's death. The housekeeper testified with immunity. Victoria also got conspiracy to commit murder in 3 cases. Life in prison without parole. Vanessa Hartley was convicted of attempted murder for shooting David. 25 years. Claire Hayes was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder. 10 years with possibility of parole after 5. My mother testified against Claire at trial. Claire made her choice. She chose money over family. Some things can't be forgiven. Richard Donovan took an immunity deal. He admitted everything, that he'd known Victoria killed Catherine, that he'd been too afraid to say anything for 35 years. After the trial, Richard got sober. He sent me a letter apologizing. He also sent a check for $2 million. I donated every penny to domestic violence prevention organizations. The Donovan empire collapsed. Assets seized. Donovan Enterprises dissolved. The estate was sold at auction. I moved to Seattle with David. We got married in a small ceremony 3 months later. Just close friends, no drama, just love. I gave birth to Grace Rebecca Winters on a beautiful spring morning. 7 pounds, 6 ounces, healthy and perfect. We named her Grace for the grace we'd been shown. Rebecca for Blake's first victim. David was in the delivery room crying tears of joy when Grace was born. "She's perfect," he whispered. "You're both perfect." I work now as an education consultant for David's nonprofit. $95,000 salary. We live in a beautiful apartment overlooking Puget Sound. My mother visits once a month. She's an amazing grandmother. Claire writes me letters from prison. I haven't read them. Maybe someday, but not today. People still recognize me sometimes. Usually I say no and move on, but occasionally when it's another woman who looks trapped, I'll talk to her. If something feels wrong, trust yourself. Get help. You're stronger than you know. Blake Donovan told me I was worthless. He was wrong. Victoria Donovan told me I was an easy target. She was wrong. I was a woman with everything to fight for. And when I stood at that altar and exposed them all, I became dangerous. Not with violence or money, but with truth. Grace Rebecca Winters is 6 months old now. She has David's dark hair and my green eyes. She laughs constantly. She's perfect. David is an incredible father. He gets up for 3 a.m. feedings. He changes diapers while singing silly songs. He reads to her every night. People sometimes ask if he resents that Grace isn't biologically his. "Wait," they'll say, confused. "I thought you said David is the father?" He is the father, biologically, genetically, in every way. The paternity test proved it. The baby was conceived that night in Seattle. Not from Blake, from David. We're a family. Real, messy, imperfect, beautiful. Today is Sunday. David, Grace, and I are at Discovery Park in Seattle. Grace is in her stroller, making cooing sounds, reaching for trees. A woman approaches us, maybe 40 years old, pushing her own stroller. She stops, looks at me. "Excuse me, are you Emma Hayes?" "Yes, I just wanted to say thank you." She's tearing up. "I was in a really bad relationship. He made me feel so small, so worthless. Then I saw your story. What you did at that wedding, it gave me the courage to leave." She wipes her eyes. "I called off my engagement. I moved out. I'm safe now. And I'm happy now. I wanted you to know that your courage helped me find mine. Thank you for telling me that." "No, thank you. You saved my life by saving yours." She looks at Grace. "Your daughter is beautiful. Thank you." She walks away. Another woman who escaped. Another life saved. David squeezes my hand. "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay." We find a bench overlooking the water. Grace is awake, looking around with curious eyes. I hold her on my lap. She grabs my finger. "This is the life Blake said I didn't deserve. The life Victoria tried to take. The life Claire was willing to let them destroy for money. But I'm here. Grace is here. David is here. And we're happy. Blake Donovan sits in a federal prison in Oregon. He'll be 70 before he's eligible for parole. He tried to write me letters. I sent everyone back unopened. Victoria Donovan died in prison 4 months ago. Heart attack. She was 75. The funeral was small. I didn't go. Vanessa Hartley is still in prison. 15 more years to go. Claire was released on parole 8 months ago. She's living with our mother, working at a grocery store. She asked to see me 3 months ago. I said no. Last week, Claire showed up at our house. I was in the front yard with Grace. Claire got out of her car. She looked different. Older. Tired. Ordinary. "Emma," she said quietly, "what are you doing here?" I wanted to apologize. "I don't want your apology. Please, just 5 minutes." I sent Grace inside. Once alone, I turned to Claire. "You have 5 minutes, Emma. I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. But I need you to know I regret it every single day. I was jealous of you. Dad loved you more. When Blake came along, I wanted to take that from you. Victoria offered me money and I took it. You practiced your crying face. For my funeral. Claire started crying. I know. I was a monster. I've spent 5 years thinking about what I did. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm sorry. I looked at her. My sister who'd agreed to let someone murder me for money. Did you spend the money? I asked. No, she was going to pay after you died, so I never got it. So you betrayed me for nothing. Yes, I betrayed you for nothing. I can't forgive you, Claire. Maybe someday, but not today. What you did, that's not something I can just get over. I understand, but I don't hate you. You're just someone who used to be my sister. Someone who made a terrible choice. Are you happy? Yes. Very. Good, that's good. Claire wiped her eyes. I'll go. I won't bother you again. She drove away. I stood in my front yard thinking about forgiveness, about family, about whether some betrayals can ever be healed. I don't have answers. That night, David and I sit on our back porch watching the sunset. Do you ever think about what your life would have been if you'd married Blake? David asks. I'd be dead. They would have staged an accident. Blake would have played grieving widower. David reaches for my hand, but that didn't happen. No, I found that laptop. I fought back. Grace is asleep upstairs. This is the life I fought for. This quiet, ordinary, beautiful life. Blake Donovan told me I was worthless, that my baby was worthless. He was wrong on both counts. I am a woman who survived a murder plot, who exposed corruption, who stood at an altar and told the truth. That's not worthless. That's strength. Grace is loved beyond measure, protected fiercely. She will grow up knowing she's safe, wanted, worth fighting for. That's not worthless. That's everything. 3 years have passed since the wedding that destroyed the Donovan empire. Grace is 3.5 now. She's in preschool. She comes home with paintings and stories. Yesterday, she told me about a boy who shared his crackers. He's my best friend now, she announced. David and I had a son last year, Robert, after my father. He's 18 months old, toddling around. He adores his big sister. We bought a house in Seattle 6 months ago. 3 bedrooms, a backyard with a swing set. It's not a mansion, just a home, but it's ours. I still work with David's foundation. I've designed literacy programs for 12 schools, trained over 200 teachers. My mother moved to Seattle last year. She wanted to help with the kids. Jessica visits twice a year. She's still teaching, still fighting the good fight. Blake is still in prison, at least another 27 years. Victoria died in prison 4 months ago. I didn't mourn her. Tonight, after putting the kids to bed, David and I sit on our back porch with wine, watching the sunset. The sky turns orange and pink and purple. Grace is asleep with her stuffed rabbit. Robert is in his crib. David is next to me, the scar on his shoulder, the only reminder of the bullet. This is the life I fought for. Blake Donovan told me I was worthless, that my baby was worthless. He was wrong. I am a woman who survived a murder plot, who exposed evil, who stood at an altar and told the truth even though it was terrifying. That's not worthless. That's strength. Grace and Robert are loved beyond measure. They will grow up knowing they're safe, wanted, worth fighting for. That's not worthless. That's everything. I think about the women who didn't survive. Catherine, Rebecca. Did they try to fight back? Did anyone believe them? I survived because I had evidence, because Dolores helped me, because David had resources. But so many women don't have that. They die quietly, and their killers walk free. That's why I speak at conferences, why I train teachers, why I push for better laws. Not for me. I'm safe now, for them, for the next woman who needs someone to believe her. David stands up. Ready for bed? Yeah, long day. We check on both kids. Grace sprawled across her bed, Robert sleeping on his stomach. Both perfect, both safe. In our bedroom, I look at myself in the mirror. I'm 36 now, lines around my eyes from smiling. Gray hairs, a body that's carried 2 children. I look different than I did 4 years ago. Less uncertain, less apologetic, less small. I look like a woman who knows her worth. David wraps his arms around my waist. What are you thinking about? How far we've come? How much has changed? Do you have any regrets? No regrets. I wouldn't change anything. Even the scary parts? Even the scary parts. Because they led me here. To you. To our kids. To this life. We go to bed. David falls asleep quickly. I lie awake listening to the sounds of our house, the hum of the refrigerator, the soft breathing of my children. These are the sounds of safety, of home, of a life that's mine. Blake sits in prison. Victoria is dead. Vanessa is locked away. Clear is rebuilding from ruins. And I'm here, in a comfortable bed with my family sleeping peacefully. I won, not because I destroyed them, not because I got revenge. I won because I survived, because I built a life worth living, because I transformed trauma into purpose, into advocacy, into protection for others. I won because I'm happy, and happiness after trauma is the best possible revenge. Tomorrow, I'll wake up and make breakfast. Grace will tell me about her dreams. Robert will throw Cheerios and laugh. David will drink coffee and kiss me. I'll work on education programs. It'll be a normal day, ordinary, boring even, and it'll be perfect because I'm alive to live it. My children are safe to grow up in it. And somewhere, another woman who saw my story will find courage to leave her dangerous situation. That's enough. That's everything. I close my eyes and fall asleep in my husband's arms, safe and loved and free. Blake Donovan said I was worthless. He was wrong. I am Emma Winters, mother, wife, educator, advocate, survivor. A woman who looked evil in the face and said no. A woman who fought back when fighting back seemed impossible. I'm a woman who won. And that's exactly how this story ends.